Yes, it is I, Edward Nigma, the Riddler, and more importantly, your intellectual superior.
The first Riddler challenge was kind of annoying because the Riddler kept yelling at me and taunting me because I couldn't solve it. He eventually stopped and then started back up again. Thankfully, it does not do this for later challenges.
You know, portrait, painting, picture on the wall, in a frame. A painting of something sharp. So you did it! Well done! I would have expected a child to work that one out, let alone the world's greatest detective.
I can understand why they did this, since getting the hang of the Riddler's challenges is nearly non-existent. They all require your full attention and demand you to fully get to know your surroundings. The Riddler puzzles can be almost impossible at times, but you can start to pick up on some of the patterns and methods to discover them. Regardless, it is still a challenge, and there is a conclusion to the Riddler challenges if you can collect them all. All 240 of them.
Back to the holding cells. Bowles wasn't too smart.
You get great maps for the island and various buildings you may be inside at the time. But I found myself really wishing there was a mini-map I could view at all times moving in the direction I may be moving in, so I can better keep track of where I was and where I was going. Or at least the option to have it showing, or not.
He sealed himself off. He's got your father.
Batman is extremely vulnerable to gunfire, even after maximum upgrades. Points that the game saves threw me off a little, and I had to double back a couple of times and pick up some things I had already picked up because I apparently hadn't saved properly. So maybe a save now type of option would have been nice. However, it's not a big complaint, and I became accustomed to waiting for the little circly thing letting me know it's saving before I turn the game off. So it was in part user fail. Bad NPC IQ. I mean, I guess Batman is stealthy, but come on, I just detonated an explosive. Again, not a super flaw, but just a questionable one. No mid-air grappling. So, I guess Batman can't do things in mid-air, like we know him to be able to do. This was one of the few slightly moderate flaws worth taking note. And it's not a big deal, but it's definitely worth mentioning. One minor complaint I've seen other people mention is that the detective mode is needed quite a bit in the game, from locating various hostages, enemy locations, and enemy movement patterns, to solving the Riddler's challenges. But considering I would rather have the option and the help than to not have it, I'm very okay with it. You can hit the R1 to grapple to safety if you fall somewhere too dangerous for Batman. This is somewhat similar to newer games using a different system where instead of dying and being frustrated, you're just sort of saved. If you wait long enough to grapple to safety, you will indeed die. But dying can be fun since you get all sorts of various death scenes depending on where you are in the game and who you may be fighting at the time.
Now suffer.
This might be a bug, but I found that if you are in the game and you press the PS button on the controller to put the game in the background to see your cross media bar, and then choose the little quit game, it'll basically cause your PS3 to freak out and turn off. The Uncharted 2 beta did this to me also, but if you exit the game normally, there is no problems at all. So it's not a big deal, but just I wanted to mention it. Another interesting and at least new approach to me in this game is that Batman regains health he's lost with the experience points he gains from beating his enemies. The perspective and gameplay of the encounters with Scarecrow really made me think of Little Big Planet on a bad trip or something.
You're mine, will shatter like glass.
The gameplay reminded me a lot of Metal Gear Solid 4, which is also an epic game, but in Batman there is of course much more action, which I generally prefer. The bosses never really struck me as being very complex or difficult, although I beat the game in normal mode, and from my understanding the hard setting does cause Batman to take more damage, and you also unlock the biggest bang trophy if you beat the game in hard. The final objective was interesting, but certainly very hands-off, and didn't really seem to test or really utilize all the skills and tools I had acquired. Speaking of tools, you do get to use some of Batman's wonderful toys. The zipline launcher, the batarangs, explosive gel, a very useful cryptograph sequencer, and you get numerous upgrades after a certain amount of XP is collected, where you can even get to use 3 batarangs at once, and a remote controlled batarang, and other upgrades including armor upgrades, again adding to the concept of making you want to collect and do everything you can in this game. The combat system in this game is awesome, and if you practice enough, it is possible to fight any number of enemies and not get hit at all. It's basic, but it works so well. You hit the square button to attack, and if you see the little icon flash above a close by enemy, you have to counter by hitting this triangle button. There are more complex combos you can do by tapping the L1 button and using the batarangs, or grapple, or even your cape. Although prior to the final boss, I had to admit that fighting the 20 henchmen was very difficult. But that fight is optional if you want the trophy, and there's also a little surprise if you watch through the end credits. Around 84 of the 100% completion of the game is done in story mode. That's if you complete story mode and collect everything. After completion of the story mode, you unlock Armored Batman for the challenge maps. Also, it's important to note that you unlock challenges for the challenge mode by solving the Riddler's challenges. Another important reason to beat the game completely.